Well, so we have to do business, and Sandra is here. Sandra, what do we have as latest?
We are talking about inflation rate. It's been dropping, and a lot of people are expressing concern about going into an election year and why the rates are coming down. We want to speak to an economist for his perspective on why he thinks that we're hovering around a single digit and all that. That's what we have in business.
Yeah, I love that.
Good evening. I am Sandra S. and I'm always here for business. Continuous reduction of food prices in the last quarter of 2019 has influenced a marginal drop in the inflation for December last year. The national year-on-year inflation rate recorded for the month has seen a reduction of 0.3 percentage points from the rate recorded in November last year. According to government statistician Professor Samuel Kobina-Enim, parts of food inflation dominating the rate, housing and transportation also recorded marginal charges during the period.
The Consumer Price Index (CPI) measures changes in the prices of a fixed basket of goods and services that households in Ghana consume. According to the government statistician Professor Samuel Kobina-Enim, between November 2019 and December 2019, the price level of foods and non-alcoholic beverages went down slightly. This fall is predominantly driven by a decrease in price levels of vegetables and fish. Non-food subclasses with the highest year-on-year inflation include other transport services, postal and courier services, and housing.
This shows that the year-on-year inflation rate for December 2019 is 7.9. To put this figure in a context, we want to recall that the year-on-year inflation between November 2018 and November 2019 was 8.2, which shows that from a year-on-year basis, there has been a drop of 0.3 between November 2018 and November 2019 on one hand, relative to December 2018 and December 2019 on the other hand. Food inflation continued to dominate, and food inflation precisely is contributing about 2/5 of the inflation figure that we shared with you, which is 7.9. Relative to the 4 previous months, we realized that the figure has ranged between 45.5% and 39.4%. So it's still dominant around 2/5 as a contributor of inflation rate for the country. Followed by this are 2 others, which is housing and transportation. So we see marginal changes in housing and transportation, which when you put together, it gives us about 1/3 as a contributor to our inflation.
He says the Greater Accra and Volta regions had the highest rate of inflation for the period, whilst the Ashanti region had the lowest.
Greater Accra region continued to drive inflation with an inflation figure of 12.0%, followed by Volta region 9.5% and Upper West region 8.6%. So these 3 regions have recorded inflation figures that are higher than the national average of 7.9%. And Ashanti region is recording the lowest year-on-year inflation rate of 5.0%. So we clearly see that the disaggregation at the regional level is showing a 7.0 difference between Greater Accra region, which is recording an inflation figure of 12.0, and Ashanti region, which is recording an inflation figure of 5.0.
Inflation on imported goods was 6.1%, whilst that of locally manufactured goods recorded 8.7% on average. Eben Sabutie's report for Joy Business.
A quick reminder that the rate has reduced from 8.2% to 7.9%. Dr. Lord Mensah is an economist and he will be joining us shortly. But before we do that, let's take a look at the trends of inflation over the past 1 year. And as you can see in that graphic, we've stayed around a single digit for the past, for the first half of last year. And the figures kept dropping from August and went up briefly up in November, and then it dropped again, started dropping, and here we are from 8.2%, and we further dropped to 7.9%, and the percentage drop is 0.3%. So what does it really mean, and do you actually feel that when you go to the market? Dr. Lord Mensah is an economist, and he's here to help us. Good evening, sir, and thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, good evening.
All right, Doctor, if you can hear me, we are moving into an election year and we've stayed around a single digit for the first half of last year. And then also somewhere around August, if you monitor that graphic, you realize that it started dropping, and then November it went up, and where we are. Does this really suggest something, especially when we're heading towards the elections?
Yeah, it is a good signal. I mean, if we should continue in that trajectory, I think it should be able to help us as Ghanaians and for every single person. It gives you an idea of how price you can manage in your homes, because if prices are being kept as a result of this single-digit inflation, you can plan. You can easily plan, because you will get to know your consumption level at each point in time. It won't be like you've collected your salary today, and the next week you are going to buy something, prices have gone up. But then there's the kind of a risk looming in the future, which for me, we should take that into consideration when we are planning at the national level.
All right.
You see this Iraq and then the American war going on. Iraq is a bigger producer. Iran is the bigger producer of, Iran. Iran is a bigger producer of oil. And, Ghana may import oil. And whatever the case may be, prices of oil can go up, and which can feed into all other things in this country. So those are things we should, if the world global price of oil, the barrel goes up as a result of this feud between the two countries, we should have problems. But we pray that it will stay the way it is, that we should all be fine in terms of our planning, and then our consumption will be smoother, and you are sure of what you can save and what you can consume.
Right. It's good you spoke about oil prices. Well, we know oil prices are likely to go up, and especially with what is happening in the Middle East with the U.S. But we've also been told that food prices are the main driver for the figures that we are seeing. Consistently, we've seen that the rates have been dropping. Will you say that one single subsector, which is the food, can actually drive the inflation rates consistently as we've seen?
Oh, well, it is a weighted average, and it depends on the weight that we place on food. And I think food being part of our daily consumption carries a heavy weight. And so, therefore, if food prices, become stable as a result of some policies that are being turned out, as a result of maybe the climate being favorable in food production, obviously we should enjoy that stability. And for me, I'm not surprised at all.
Will you want to give some credit to the Planting for Food and Jobs?
Well, some part I will, but then generally we had heavy rains, which mainly controlled by nature. You can't predict it going forward when it comes to nature. So let's see how consistent that will be. Then we can give that credit.
All right, quickly before we go, want to see the outlook for the coming months. Yes, you spoke about oil prices. It could be a driver as well. But what do you think the impact will be on the figures in the coming months?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it should continue the way it's going, and it turns out that America should go ahead with their war as it's been prescribed, then obviously, if you do not get that production into the open, and in the end, it will affect the global price of oil. And remember, when they are importing the oil into this country, the pricing at the pump level will take into consideration the market price of oil globally. And so if price goes up, it has a tendency of building up in prices in this country. And therefore, obviously, if you're going to pick something, you're going to buy something from one point to the other, you definitely use a vehicle, and the vehicle will use a fuel. And if it turns out that the fuel goes up, the driver will price high. And whoever is going to buy the food will not like to also keep that high price. We'll pass it on to the consumer.
I was going to ask you on a softer note, I was going to ask you whether you go to the market and if this really reflects when people go to the market anyway.
Yeah.
That's all by our business for now. I am Sandra Esenamapenu. Surely I'll be back after 8 p.m. with more business. Do stay tuned.